What's up everybody, Zach D again, here to make another video about electrical panels. I thought the last one had kind of a shitty angle on it, so I just wanted to give you a little bit better of a look. Hopefully this angle is better. I'm going to be going over the different wire sizes in Romex and the different size breakers as well, and how their amperages and wire size correspond to each other. And yeah, just going over a few more tips on the high voltage electrical panel, so hopefully you can get a little bit more out of this video than my last one. And yeah, stay tuned. So this is 10 AWG or AUG, which is American wire gauge wire. This is a more modern version, so if you're at a remodel, it might have a different jacket. Typically nowadays it's orange, and somewhere on this jacket of every type of Romex, it'll tell you the wire gauge size and the amount of conductors in it. This is 10-2, so it's just got a white, a black, and a ground. Now in this specific application, it's going to be a water heater. It's going to be on a 30 amp breaker. 10 gauge wire is max 30 amps, so you can't put anything over that. You can go below it if you need to, but typically it is designed to go on a 30 amp circuit. This is a 240 volt water heater, so we'll be using the neutral and the black, or the white and the black, as hot conductors. Inside of the panel, you have to phase this, which is the act of wrapping it in black tape or red tape or any other hot color for that matter to signify that it's a hot conductor, not a neutral any longer. This specific appliance does not need the neutral, so therefore you can use 10-2. It's cheaper than using 10-3. I mean, in a lot of applications you will use the 10-3 if you need the neutral, but a lot of water heaters, they don't need the neutral. So yeah, that's what we're doing with this one. Okay, so I've rigged my phone up so hopefully you can see this angle. I know some of my videos have pretty bad angles, so it's probably hard to see what I'm doing, but basically when I phase a wire a different color to use it in the way that it's intended to be, or not intended to be, but you know what I mean, I need to phase this to make this white a hot color because it's going to be in a 2-pole breaker, which I'll describe later in this video. But basically, I'm just going to get the tape at an angle as high as I can, preferably the entire thing. And I'm slowly just going to wrap like a candy cane. Just work my way down as much as I can. If you're running short on tape or you're trying to conserve tape, you can kind of like measure it out to the breaker and see how much tape you're going to need on it, because you know, tape runs out and probably don't want to buy anymore. I'm assuming your company doesn't either, but yeah, just work your way all the way down. I'm gonna go over some of this panel stuff again because my first video I just had a really bad angle, so hopefully this one's a little bit better and easier to understand. Preface: these SCR wires, the way that they're landed, I would have not done it this way. They have someone else go through and do these. I would have just ran these straight down into the lugs. It's a much cleaner look. I understand the philosophy behind this. It's basically preparing it for failure in the case that something has to be done and they have to be pulled out and you need extra length. That makes all the sense in the world. In my experience, I haven't ran into a ton of situations where that happens, but that's not to say that that's a bad idea to do this. I don't personally like it. It looks not very clean to me, but yeah, just take that with a grain of salt. So with these grounds, I run my hands down them and I heat them up. I like to heat the wire up because I feel like when I get it into place, it molds better and it keeps the form that I'm going for. So yeah, I'll just run my hands down it, usually with gloves. You try not to do this without gloves. They actually get pretty hot, and yeah, it'll burn your skin. And I'm sure with the, there's some kind of like grease or something on them. You probably just don't want to run your hands through it, especially if it's hot. Once I get heated, I take my finger and I try to poke it up into the corner, and I basically just ride this side corner all the way up. And it's somewhat difficult, but you can kind of get it to go all the way to the top and then hold it there. You never release. You just hold it until you get it into place. I run it down to the screw that I want and I slowly fold it, and I want to make a cut towards just poking through to the other side of this screw. This is a sub panel, so I have this additional ground bar. There's other forms of, I don't see the main lug panels a lot anymore. I think most places now are moving to sub panels with disco meters or disconnect meters, which makes all of these sub panels technically. So we're gonna float the neutrals when I end up landing them in this bar and the grounds in this bar. Before, when I first started, you would land both of them in here, but that was only on main lug applications where the meter's on the other side and the only disconnect was right here on a main lug. So if you're careful and you use a lot of technique and finesse, I mean, this isn't the cleanest of everything, but it'll get covered up by the other conductors going into the breakers. So yeah, you can get the grounds pretty tucked in here, tucked away from everything. So, you know, when you get a straight look at the panel, it's fairly clean for how quickly I did this. So yeah, that's my method for the grounds, and I'll just keep going with the rest of the panel. Okay, so as you can see, I've landed one side of this panel breaker-wise. You really don't want to see something like this, but like I keep saying, these home runs and everything are landed at rough time, and then we make them up at trim time, which I am opposed to, but what can you do? Anyways, here, this is a 2-pole breaker, so what that means is it takes up 2 parts of the bar, you know, it takes up 2 of these teeth, which again, do not touch these. I know that the power is not live to this building, so that's the only reason I'm doing that. But basically, it's 2 breakers in one. It's a 2-pole 30. Now, a 30 amp breaker can use 10 gauge wire. 10 gauge wire cannot go over 30 amps. So you can use, like, say a 25 or even a 20, and you can still use this 10 gauge wire, but you cannot exceed 30. That's all that this wire is rated for. And that being said too, whatever breaker this is going to, like, this is the water heater, so you should always check the name card to make sure that the max amperage is right for everything you got set up here. Anyways, so that being said, 30 amp is typically 10 gauge wire. Again, this is a 25 amp, so it's a little less than 30, but we still use 10 gauge wire because this 20 amp breaker, which, you know, is 5 less than 25, has 12 gauge wire. 12 gauge wire is rated at max 20 amps. So that being said, you can kind of think about it as 10 gauge is 30, 12 gauge is 20, and then up here we have 14 gauge wire, and that's landing in a 15. 14 gauge wire's max amperage is 15. So just keep that in mind. That kind of tells you what style of breaker you're going to need for each one of these home runs. Now you notice that these don't have this extra part here. Per code, inside of a house or an apartment, you have to have AFCI protection. This little white button indicates that it's like a test button, so it's kind of like a GFCI plug, but it's an AFCI breaker. So all of these circuits, these are all lighting circuits, so we're using 15 amp breakers and wire because you don't need too much excess. Some people would argue that 20 amp circuits are better for the plugs in the house too, so that you can, you know, capacitate like vacuum cleaners and any kind of heavy duty appliance that you might plug in. But typically most companies out here, for all of the lighting circuits, and that's, you know, the outlets in a bedroom, the lights in a bedroom, just like any of the stuff that's near lighting. Now, you know, I have a couple breakers over here I haven't made up yet. You'll see that these are 20 amp, and they have the purple button, which means they're GFCI and AFCI breakers all in one. So they're a dual function device. These specific ones are in relation to the kitchen outlets. Specifically, this is the microwave, this is the disposal, and this is the dishwasher. Now they have to be dual protected because they are in an area that has water near it or right next to it. So per code, they have to be dual function protected. Now this microwave one, they like it here to be dual function. It's actually in a cabinet above the range, so it's not even near water. So this could be an AFCI 20 if we wanted to, but they just do things like this here, and I have to respect that. Well, here's another finished one. So the only other wire size I have in this panel to give you an example for is this 6 gauge aluminum. It's on a 40 amp breaker. It's going to the range oven. You can actually run 50 amps on this wire as well, but a lot of people run 6 gauge aluminum for a couple different things. But yeah, this one's on 40. I could go higher, but they're using a 40 amp breaker on account of the appliance that's going to be installed on this circuit. So its max amperage is 40. But yeah, if you're an apprentice and you're just learning how to land home runs in a panel and your specific job site has a specific panel schedule, you should really try to land all of the home runs on the sides that they're actually going on. Like specifically, I have to have all of these breakers the exact same in every unit. So what happened here is they literally landed all of the home runs that were supposed to be on this side over here and vice versa. So with my time constraints and how quickly I need to get this done, this is what I end up with, and I am appalled at what I had to do. It's very gross looking. I tried as best as I could to make it clean on the bottom, but yeah. Really, if you're running home runs and you have to land them at rough time and the panel doesn't get made up till trim time, just take into account we're all trying to put out good work, or at least we should be. So really try to get the information out of someone on which side these go on and whatnot, because yeah, you should really try to do clean work. I believe it's a code. I believe it's a code that you're supposed to do tradesman-like work. Yeah, and the panel is one of the most important things for an inspector to look at and know that it's done well, because it really shows what the rest of the unit is more than likely wired like. So yeah, those are some pro tips. Hopefully you glean something more from this video than my last panel video. I just felt the need to put out more because I saw that the angle was so bad. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys on the next one.